boy, you ever have that feeling when you're like fighting a battle and you feel like you're contributing and maybe winning in the battle, like you're turning the tide, and then you see that maybe everything's being pushed the other way? Look, all right, someone left a comment on my video, and I'm just drunk enough to address it. Someone said, Watchmojo just made a list of the top 10 deconstruction anime. You should tear it a new one. And I went, what? Why? Why would they do that? That sounds like the worst nightmare I've ever heard of in my whole life. And of course, because I was just drunk enough, I decided to go and watch that video. And I will offer my thoughts on it, just because this is something I have a problem with. I have a problem with this whole deconstruction meme. This fucking meme. That's what this is. This is a meme. This idea that there's all these deconstructions out there that are changing all the genres and shit. It's a fucking meme. It's a buzzword. It's a buzzword that's getting overused. I'm not surprised that something like Watchmojo would use it, and I'm glad that not a lot of people take Watchmojo all that seriously, but I mean, this video came out today and has 70,000 views, a lot of people, and not a whole lot of dislikes. It's not like people are raging against this shit, you know. Some people are going to watch this and just take it for granted. And I know that there's not a lot of overlap between that audience and my audience, so this is not like it's going to help in a big way for me to talk about this, but I don't know, maybe when you hear someone talking about this Watchmojo video, you can link them this, and I'm going to get another beer before I take this on. Oh, God. So, alright, Watchmojo lists their top 10 deconstructions, even though I just yesterday watched a brand new YouTuber who I suggest that you check out, because she seems pretty cool, and she's going to be doing Mahou Shoujo videos, who just had a video called Madoka Magica Isn't a Deconstruction, making the point quite well. I mean, I made the point in my own Madoka video a few years back. Of course, Madoka's on this list, but you know what? Let's just get into it in order, alright? I knew Madoka would be on here. This the only reason people talk about deconstruction in anime is because of Madoka. This is all Madoka's fault. Because someone somewhere floated around the idea that Madoka was a deconstruction, and it created this whole fucking meme that anime has all these deconstructions that everyone has to talk about all the time. Now look, this list starts off fine enough. The first show that they list is Samurai Flamenco, and I'm actually completely okay with considering that a deconstruction of the hero genre, because it is a show that seeks out to take the tropes, examine them, comment on them, and subvert their intentions. That's what a deconstruction is to me. It's when you take the genre and your show is about commenting on the nature of the genre. You're taking it apart, seeing what it does, sort of analyzing it, you know? You look at Watchmen, and the point of Watchmen is to comment on the nature of superheroes. What would it actually mean to have superheroes in the real world? And you take out all the fictional element and try to make it realistic, and then, you know, twist it and see what happens when you apply, when you remove the fantasy element and then examine what it would mean for these heroes to exist, what it would mean for the story beats to happen. And I think Samurai Flamenco is going for that. I mean, I don't know how successfully it comments on hero stories. I don't know how much it has to say that is of meaning, but it seems clear to me that the intention of the series is that, and I mean, in episode 15 or so of Samurai Flamenco, like, fucking Flamenco meets God and has a conversation about the nature of being a hero. Like, the show is, it deconstructs itself. It deconstructs everything, like, about narrative. It's beyond the impossible levels of crazy. So that show is definitely trying to be subversive and to be a deconstruction, I think. So that's fine. That's fair. Their next choice is School Days, and I'm actually fairly okay with School Days being on this part of the list too, because I do think that the anime is kind of a deconstruction of the idea of erotic visual novels, where in those games there's a bunch of different paths you take to hook up with different girls, and And in the original games, there's a few bad endings that can happen if you like cheat on certain girls, essentially. But the anime takes it to this weird next level where it's like the main character fucks like every girl in his school. And as opposed to, whereas when you watch like Air and Canon, the idea is that the timeline resets, and it's like you get to the end of the romance with one girl, and then you're just kind of, there's like a soft reboot, and then you do it with the next girl, like Amagami SS or something. And the idea of School Days is they went, what if it doesn't reset? What if he fucks all of them? What are the consequences of this? What would actually happen? If you tried to chase every girl at school, if you actually got the harem and fucked all the girls in your harem, and the answer is you get horribly murdered. So, School Days, also a little closer to Deconstruction. Now here's where this list goes completely off the rails. The Daily Lives of High School Boys, which they described as a deconstruction of the slice of life genre, even though the show is just a comedy show. Nothing about it says anything about the slice of life genre. Like, the joke is that it's a daily life show that is wacky. Like, I don't see how this is any different from Azumanga Daioh. I don't see how this is any different from Nichijou, which was actually, which the same way was titled Ordinary Life, even though it's a bunch of wacky hijinks. How is this any different from all the other slice of life shows that are about wacky hijinks? They're just comedy shows. It's just a comedy. It's not a slice of life deconstruction. It has nothing to do with the slice of life genre. Just because the joke is that life is wacky doesn't mean that it's it doesn't have anything to say about slice of life. It's not trying to be that. It's just a comedy show. And I have the same thing to say about School Rumble, which they put as their number 7, which I don't know where this came from. I've never heard School Rumble talked about as a deconstruction. I don't know how this happened. As far as I know, School Rumble is no different from a show like Seto no Hanayome or any other rom-com of the mid-2000s, these comedy rom-coms. Like, the way they explain it in this video is that it's a deconstruction of a school, of like a high school romance, because I guess it's funny, and it plays around with the romance. Like, it has twists and turns in the story. It's a complete subversion. Like, what is different about School Rumble from like Nisekoi or something? Like, it's the same. It's a comedy romance show. Like, doing a few things differently is not the same thing as a subversion. And that's what this all comes down to. Like, what makes this, the reason this deconstruction meme keeps perpetuating is that people have this idea in their head of the boilerplate version of a genre, and they just kind of make a giant assumption that everything in the genre is like that, and the second that one show does like one thing different, it's suddenly totally a subversion and deconstruction. Even though it's just trying to be original. It's just trying to be a show in the genre that has a unique take on the genre, as opposed to being the exact same thing that you're expecting, Like, making a show that, God, I'll get into that. There's one coming up that I'll definitely get into that with. So their next one is the Monogatari franchise, which they said it was a deconstruction of like harem and fan service shows. That is ludicrous. The show is a harem fan service show. It's just a really unique one, like, not to say that the show has nothing to say about the genre. It does say some things about moe, but it doesn't deconstruct those things. If anything, it reconstructs those things. It just does them. It just does harem and fan service, and then points out that it's doing it. Like, the conceit in Watchmen, like, the only character who's actually a superhero, which is Dr. Manhattan, destroys the world, and everyone else ends up being ineffectual and useless. That's the deconstruction. They don't just do a superhero story. Dr. Manhattan doesn't just save the day in the end like any other superhero would, because that would defeat the fucking point. You can't just say, oh, isn't it funny that in anime we show tits, and then show your tits and say it's a deconstruction because I pointed out what I was doing, That's just lampshade hanging. It's just like, being self-aware. Bakemonogatari's self-aware. That is not a deconstruction. This is where the confusion's coming in. The next one really blew my fucking mind to shit because it's Ore Monogatari. Ore fucking Monogatari at the number 5 slot. A deconstruction of the shoujo genre because it's about the atypical protagonist falling in love. It's not the handsome guy. What a deconstruction! It's just a romance story where they didn't make the handsome guy the one who falls in love. There's nothing different from the rest of the genre other than the appearance of the main character. That is not a deconstruction. It has nothing to say about the romance genre because it plays all the same tropes. It does everything that a romance would do, just with a different kind of character. It's just exploring how an atypical protagonist would experience the exact same kind of story that is typical of the genre, And, to say that it's different because, well, almost all other shoujo protagonists are handsome, But it's like, they also have different personalities. Like, there's always something different. It's not like every shoujo lead is the literal same guy. They've each got a distinctive thing, and in Ore Monogatari's case, his distinctive thing is that he's not handsome. He's not traditionally handsome. That's the difference. That's just a way to set the series apart and to make it not mundane, to give it its own edge. But that's not a deconstruction because it doesn't say anything about the shoujo genre. It doesn't say anything about romance. It just is a romance with a different kind of main character. So the next one they have, number 4, is Mobile Suit Gundam. And Mobile Suit Gundam, I am somewhat willing to say, is a deconstruction. I don't know that its intention, though, is to be one. Because the thing about Mobile Suit Gundam is that, yes, it's the first adult mecha show. It's the first, military mecha show. It's the first one that's not super robots. It's not won by the power of friendship. The robots don't have just crazy powers they can pull out of their ass. There's, more sets of rules. There's political backdrop to it. But I don't know that Mobile Suit Gundam was setting out to take apart super robots and then to, subvert it. So much as that it was trying to just be a realistic robot show. They just wanted to make one that was different. Wanted to take robots and apply it to a different genre. I don't think super robots and real robots are necessarily a response to one another. It's just a different lineage of robot show, And if you want a show that actually is trying to deconstruct super robot shows, Martian successor Nadesco is right there. A show that goes out of its way to have the main characters, be fans of super robot shows, and they watch them and talk about them, and they want to be like them, and then the subversion happens where their lives don't go that way. That show is a deconstruction of the genre. I'd even say Macross is more intentionally trying to deconstruct stuff like Gundam. It's intentionally taking this military action series and then looking at it through a different lens. Maybe not deconstruction. Macross is also just trying to add something new to the formula, but each of these, again, Mobile Suit Gundam is not a commentary on super robot shows. It's just a different robot show. It's original. It's not a deconstruction. So we get into the top 3. All of these are asinine. One Punch Man, I already broke down all the reasons why One Punch Man's not really a deconstruction in my video. Is there meaning in subverting shonen tropes? Where I really think that One Punch Man, yes, the joke is subversive, but it's also nothing new. It's nothing that hasn't been done in an actual shonen series before. The whole joke of killing the bad guy in one punch happens in Dragon Ball Z, the show that's taking the piss out of for having super long battles. Dragon Ball Z also takes the piss out of itself by doing that same joke. So I don't think it's you could argue that it is intentionally commenting on the genre, and therefore could be more of a deconstruction than some of these other shows. But in terms of being something unique because of it, I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I think that the ultimate message of One Punch Man is that Saitama is heroic, and he does sacrifice himself, and he has a lot of the same ethos as other heroes. He he's a guy who's willing to throw himself under the bus for other people. He has a heroic personality. He's still a hero, just of a different type, you know? So I would say that show's a little closer than some of the other shit on this list, but I still don't really think it's a deconstruction. Then we get to Madoka Magica, which, God help me, is not in any way a commentary on the magical girl genre. It's not that different from other magical girl shows. There's plenty of other shows that do everything it does. It doesn't really comment, it doesn't say anything about magical girls. It's just a dark magical girl show. That's all it is. It's just a show where they, like, the idea behind it was, what if we made a magical girl show, but it's really dark? You know, like, it doesn't say anything about the nature of the genre. I know some people will argue that it does, and I've seen people put up arguments that all seem very reaching to me, and I completely disagree with all of them. So, I don't agree with this idea that it's a deconstruction, and that video I mentioned at the start of this video, makes a good case for why it's not. And the fucked up part is that in this Watchmojo video, at the end of them talking about Madoka, they give a shout out to Revolutionary Girl Utsuda, and they say, go watch the OG Magical Girl Deconstruction show. Why wasn't that one on the list? Why would they just give a shout out to it instead of just, like, I know Watchmojo is done through voting, and I like fan voting, and I know that Utena is not as popular as most of the other shows on this list, but what the fuck are they thinking? Like, Revolutionary Girl Utena is a deliberate deconstruction. The whole show is about making comments on the nature of fairy tales and femininity and the idea of the magical girl. It deliberately is deconstructing the genre. That's the point of the show. It's all about deconstructing tropes in basically all fiction aimed at women at all, you know? It deconstructs romantic ideas, it deconstructs high school drama. It just fucks around a lot. The show is all about fucking with you, basically. It's all about taking all these preconceived notions and just fucking with them. I mean, the transformation sequence in Utena, there's a minute and a half of Utena walking up a flight of stairs. She gets to the top, and she just magically has, like shoulder pads appear, and that's her transformation. Is like 2 shoulder pads and a little gold chain. You know, it's making fun of the shoujo transformation by making nothing, that she barely transforms. Like, everything about the show is taking the piss. So how could that not be the one they chose for the deconstruction? But of course, number 1 is the one that does not surprise me in the slightest that they put it on there, even though it's not a deconstruction at all, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion, which they described as a deconstruction of the super robot genre, even though Eva owes very little to the super robot genre, owes a lot to the real robot genre. It's a show that's extremely militaristic, goes way out of its way to present everything as very scientific and structured. Like, Nerve has, like, everything has titles, and there's bureaucracy and all this stuff. Like, it's a fucking real robot show, you know? It's, even the nature of the Evas, like, at first, they operate in a way that might be more similar to a super robot, but as the show goes along, we learn there are a bunch of rules governing how the robots work and stuff. Like, people keep saying, they point out in this video, like, people always point out the hesitation of the pilots. Like, oh, it's a deconstruction because the pilots don't want to do it and it sucks for them. That was true in Gundam! That's what the basis of this genre is! Amuro wouldn't get in the fucking robot for, like, episodes on end for most of the first movie, you know? Bright slapped him in the fucking face because he wouldn't pilot the fucking robot. Eva owes a lot to Gundam. It owes a lot to Ideon. It owes a lot to the real robot genre. It's just a psychological exploration of its characters. Like, Eva doesn't... The reason Eva feels so different from other stuff in the genre is because it's not a genre show. It has a lot of elements from genre shows. It has a lot of elements from the real robot genre. But the stuff that's different is not different to comment on the genre. It's different because the show is first and foremost a character study. It's a psychological show. It's a showcase of how these characters think and feel and trying to get into their heads. And it's about the way that people communicate and the way that our society functions by all these people trying to understand one another and failing. And the trapping, the suit it's wearing is robot show. But nothing about it is commenting on robot shows. Martian successor Nadesco came out 2 years later and is actually commenting on robot shows. It's talking about robot shows. That's a deconstruction. So if you want to remake this list, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Martian successor Nadesco, I'll accept Samurai Flamenco. I'll even accept School Days can go on this list, you know? Like, did I already say Revolutionary Girl Utena? Yeah, I did. Like, those are, like, there's not a whole lot of anime that sets out to be deconstructive. There's not a lot of anime that is trying to take this genre and shred it to pieces and put it back together. And there's plenty of anime I think could be called a reconstruction, like ReZero, where ReZero takes apart the hero of the isekai genre and shows you more of his flaws and like is about exploring this idea of like what if he fails, what if he's just like this miserable fucking loser, but then he still wins in the end. He still develops, he still gets to do the good guy stuff. It's looking at the genre and looking at what it does, but then ultimately it's doing the same thing as the genre. It's going for the same goal. You know, it wants to elicit the same emotions, and that's what Madoka Magica does. Madoka Magica, I mean, you could say that the third movie is a little bit more, I don't know if it's deconstructive of magical girls, it's deconstructive of itself in a way, like, it goes for the sad ending, you know, but, like, the ultimate point in the original show is pretty much the same as it is in any other magical girl show. Save the universe, even if by way of recreating it, you know? Like, the ending of that show is almost exactly the same as the ending of Princess Tutu or something, you know? It's just, it's going for the same thing. It's not fundamentally altering what is the nature of the genre in the way that, you know, that Martian successor Nadesco is, where it's looking at super robots and having the characters want to be that and then fail. They don't get to be super robot heroes because that's not realistic. You know, that's the point of it, is to say, haha, you don't get that. You know, that's what Watchmen was trying to do. You don't get superheroes. That's not real. This is the real shit. You know, Utena ultimately is saying, like, you know, the whole conceit of everything. I mean, it's a lot more than just a deconstruction of magical girl stuff. It's a deconstruction, really, of, like, fairy tales and stuff like that. And ultimately, like, its message in the end, it's hard to talk about the end of Utena because it's so complicated and there's so much going on in that show. But, like, its intention is to fuck with genre conventions, to end up somewhere different. It doesn't want to just reconstruct the feelings that you would already get from the genre. You know, Neon Genesis Evangelion, again, I don't think has enough to do with robot shows to comment on robot shows. Like, the point in the end, like, what it all comes to has everything to do with the characters. The robots really fall by the wayside in the end. Like, the robots aren't even there for the last 2 episodes or for the ending of the movie. Like, the robots were just the vehicle driving this show. It wasn't about robots. You know, it wasn't about fighting. It wasn't about the themes of robot shows. Whereas Samurai Flamenco, I could actually see, like, the show is about heroes. It's about the idea of someone who wants to be a transforming superhero. And at first, he tries to be that by dressing up as one, but it's different from how it is on TV. And then even when they have to fight actual monsters, it's different from how it is on TV. And then he meets God, and God's definition of the universe is different from what he expected. You know, like, that's what it is to deconstruct. So, yeah. Fuck this whole deconstruction meme. Fuck this retarded Watchmojo list. Please, everybody, stop bandying this term around so frequently, because I don't get why everyone's so into it. I don't get why everybody wants everything to be a deconstruction. I don't know if it's just a taste thing, if it's just people want to be able to say that this thing's different from the genre and therefore it's cool. Like with Madoka, it's so obvious to me that no one calling it a deconstruction knows shit about magical girls. And that's what that video is talking about, what I talked about before. Like, if you know magical girls, you would never say this if you knew the genre really well, unless you were coming at it from a really different angle. And I really, even if you think that Madoka deconstructs those things, like, just even if you think that it has elements that manage to deconstruct things about the genre, I don't think that was its intention. I don't think it was ever trying to be a deconstruction. If anything happened that way, it was coincidence. You know, like, I just don't think that so many of these shows are going out there to be a commentary on the genre. They might be trying to do something different to set themselves apart. Like with Madoka, the point was really shock value. The point of it was to have a show that looks cutesy, and then it turns on you, and it turns out it's dark, and it's a great hype machine, and it was a great marketing tactic, and it made the show insanely successful, you know? And to back that up with good enough writing that and good enough characterization on the part of Homura that people cared about the show. You know, the thing that makes that show work is that Homura is a great character. That's all that makes that show work. It has a cool time travel gimmick, a good character, good artwork, a good marketing ploy, and is well produced. That's why it's a good show. It's nothing to do with deconstructing fucking magical girls. Anyway, that's enough about that.